Alright, welcome to the video for lesson 2.2. Basically, we are working on word problems and using equations to solve them. For this one, Suma Lee won 40 super bouncy balls playing horseshoes at her school's game night. Later, she gave 2 to each of her friends. She only has 8 remaining. How many friends does she have? And that's going to be our question, right? That's what we're trying to find, our unknown. So we use capital F as the number of friends that she has. So she started with 40, so she has a total of 40 bouncing balls, right? She gave 2 to each of her friends. So that would be, F would represent F represents the number of friends. If she gave 2 to each friend, that's 2 times the number of friends, plus the 8 that were left over. So these 40 should consist of the 8 she had at the end and the 2 she gave to each of her friends, F being how many friends she has. Now that this is set up, you can flip. Becomes -8. And then we will combine, that's a war, 32. And then we'll divide by whatever's in front of the variable, which is in this case is 2. So 32 divided by 2 is 16. So 16 is our answer. In other words, Suma Lee has 16 friends. Alrighty, last one. Last example of this lesson. Imani spent half of her weekly allowance playing mini golf. To earn more money, her parents let her wash the car for $4. What is her weekly allowance if she ended up with $12? So we want to know what her weekly allowance is, right? And so let's use a capital A. We'll say A is her is Imani's allowance. Right, this is how much money she gets for her allowance. So we'll start with A. So we started with her allowance, and she spent half of her weekly allowance playing mini golf. So what do we do with this? Well, we divide it by 2, right? That'll cut it in half. To earn more money, her parents let her wash the car for $4. So what do we do with that for? Well, she had this amount of money. She spent half of it, so that's half of her allowance. She earned more money, so we would add 4 to that. And then she ended up with 12, so this should be equal to $12, right? Half of her allowance plus the 4 is 12. So we now have our equation set up. I would go flipping first. Let's flip that 4 over to the other side. So we're going to get 12 minus 4. We still have the A over 2 on this side. That's a war. Combines to make an 8. And we still have A over 2, and now we're going to clear the fraction. And we clear the fraction by multiplying both sides by whatever's in the bottom, by that denominator. So multiply both sides by 2. This gives us a 16. These 2's cancel, and we're left with an A. So her allowance is $16 a week. All right, that ends lesson 2.2.